You see him on the news.
CNN.com contributor, Dean Obeidallah. So, Dean...
Watch him at comedy clubs.
When I say Mecca, do you think of a holy place or an urban clothing line?
Read his articles. And you hear him on the radio. The Dean Obeidallah Show is on live right here on SiriusXM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters of the resistance. Wednesday, February 27th, and it is a big day, clearly. And I think historians may look back. We talked about this last night. They may look back that today was actually the first day of the impeachment hearings of Donald Trump, although not formally, and we don't know where this is going to go, but I got a sense we're heading in the right direction. And if you heard screaming today coming from somewhere, that was Trump's in Hanoi, Vietnam, screaming at his TV as Michael Cohen just decimated him. And I have to tell you, there's so much to unpack from the testimony. We'll play some clips, of course, discuss it. I have a former federal prosecutor coming on the third hour. Tom Steyer coming up on the bottom of the hour. Tiffany Cross. It's a great all-star group of people to break this down. Here is the big takeaway from today's testimony. The GOP is more concerned with protecting Donald Trump than they are with the truth, with our Constitution, or our nation. It's that blunt. The GOP is more concerned with protecting Donald Trump than the United States Constitution. And that was completely clear for everyone to see in that everything they said and did. In fact, Michael Cohen, in the middle of the testimony, called them out. And I want to play this because this, to me, is the clip of the entire hearing that sums up where the GOP has become. It's no longer the Republican Party. It's no longer about conservative ideals or values. It's about one person, protecting Donald J. Trump at all costs. And here's clip number one.
All I wanted to say is I just find it interesting, sir, that between yourself and your colleagues, that not one question so far since I'm here has been asked about President Trump. That's actually why I thought I was coming today, not to confess the mistakes that I've made. I've already done that, and I'll do it again every time you ask me about taxes or mistakes. Yes, I made my mistakes. I'll say it now again, and I'm going to pay the ultimate price. But I'm not here today, and the American people don't care about my taxes. They want to know what it is that I know about Mr. Trump. And not one question so far has been asked about Mr. Trump.
And that says it all. I mean, if you didn't watch the hearings at all, and you're just going to cover the news because busy day, you're at work, or had other things to talk about, what we learned today factually is one thing. What we learned from the Republican Party is that all they care about is Donald Trump. All they care about. No questions whatsoever by the Republicans about the allegations or the documents produced except to try to destroy it. And the Republicans, like the victims they are, because they've cornered victimhood, everything was about how unfair this is, and Chairman Cummings is unfair, and the whole system's unfair. They attacked everyone, even Tom Steyer. I'm not kidding. We'll play a clip later. To the Democrats, to Hillary Clinton. Yes, they did, because Lanny Davis is the attorney for Michael Cohen, and he worked with the Clintons. They blamed everyone for the Democrat, and they kept saying the Democrats have elevated Michael Cohen to come here today and testify. No. This is the big wrong. The Democrats had nothing to do with picking Michael Cohen. The person who picked Michael Cohen is Donald J. Trump, who picked him in 2007 to be his executive vice president. So there's no one to blame by hiring a criminal and a liar, and that's what Michael Cohen is, then Donald Trump, who enjoys being surrounded by fellow liars and criminals. Who do criminals surround themselves with, folks? Criminals. That's why every prosecution, not every, many prosecutions have people who are criminals who turn state's evidence. And yes, they're criminals because criminals tend to hang out with criminals. Is it a coincidence? He had Michael Cohen, his good friend, and Roger Stone, who's under indictment, and Paul Manafort, who he's known since 2006, George Papadopoulos, Rick Gates, Michael Flynn. Let me ask you, let's do a whataboutism. What about that time that President Obama's longtime lawyer testified to Congress that President Obama directed him to commit various crimes? Remember that? Oh, yeah, that never happened. Because this is not normal. Remember when that happened to George Bush? No, that didn't happen to him either. Because that wasn't normal. That doesn't usually happen. Bill Clinton was impeached, not removed, for lying under oath. What Donald Trump has done is so I can't even quantify in a way that makes sense to say how much worse that was. Before we get into some clips from the hearing that stood out at me, Here was today Congressman Adam Schiff, the House Intel chair, and he's not on Oversight Committee where this hearing was, but he talked after reading the statement. And by the way, the prepared statement of Michael Cohen was released late last night. People read it this morning. And here's Adam Schiff commenting on it. I think he really sums this up so well in 30 seconds. Here's clip number 2, please.
If Mr. Cohen's allegations are correct, it means the president, while in office, literally while in the Oval Office, was engaged in criminal activity, and that is furthering this campaign fraud scheme that the Southern District of New York has already identified individual one as being involved in. So that's pretty breathtaking when you think about it, that the President of the United States is allegedly paying hush money as President of the United States.
And if you didn't follow the testimony, that's exactly what happened. That Michael Cohen testified that Donald Trump continued to further the criminal scheme and crime scheme, that's the right term, that they had through the time he was actually in President of the United States. And Michael Cohen produced actual physical evidence to substantiate that, including wire transfers and checks. And what was really remarkably smart, Lanny Davis, who's the attorney for Donald Trump, the attorney for Michael Cohen, had him read his entire 20-page statement at the top. Generally, like if you remember James Comey when he testified, he'll submit the opening statement. It'll be in the record, and he just hopes members of Congress read it, and he'll highlight a few things. No, instead, Michael Cohen read it. So you have 30 minutes of just Michael Cohen utterly destroying Donald Trump. I imagine some people turned off their TV there because they were a busy day and like, well, I got it. Wow, Trump's a criminal. And here's just the quick open thing, and then I'll break it down in sort of categories because there's so much out there, and I don't want it to be confusing, and I want it from a legal point of view to really get to what I think is the key here, because there's stuff about Trump being a racist. We know about that. We'll talk about that later. It's important. But I think we need to know, and I'll share from a legal point of view, where the crimes are and what more do we know now? What has been further substantiated? What has not? Because not everything, it's not the dream I wanted, but it's pretty good. Here's Michael Cohen, just 20 seconds, summing up his opening statement. Here's clip number 3.
I am ashamed that I chose to take part in concealing Mr. Trump's illicit acts rather than listening to my own conscience. I am ashamed because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
And that was not only on cable news, by the way, that was on all the networks that was covered in the beginning. So the entire nation saw that. And those will be the clips, except for on Fox News. Although Fox News did cover it live. And what Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows did, I think they were auditioning for Fox News because within 3 or 4 minutes, they can jam so many lies in there. It was remarkable. Just special people that do that. And here, let's break down some of the crimes and the criminality we have more evidence of now. And we actually have evidence now. This is testimony that's before a congressional hearing, that's under oath. It is evidence. It can be introduced in other trials later. I think Michael Cohen will testify again in trial if it gets to that. One is that the lawyers of Donald Trump edited the statement that Michael Cohen made to Congress that was actually a lie and he pled guilty to later. So you've got Jay Sekulow and other Trump lawyers who were involved in editing that statement before it was given, not this new one, I mean the last time when Cohen lied. So they are potentially co-conspirators later. And if Trump was involved in it, then he could be as well. We'll see what happens. Then we get to the couple of big crimes here, and I'll break it down. First is the hush money type of stuff, and then Russia. So let's talk about the hush money stuff, which is right now, again to remind everyone, is being investigated not by Robert Mueller, but the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office. And everyone, including Judge Napolitano and others on Fox News, all made the big point today. Donald Trump and what's going on here in New York, with the Southern District of New York, is potentially various felonies. So here is, first, Eleanor Holmes, a Democratic congresswoman, asking Michael Cohen about, right after Access Hollywood tape comes out in October 2016, you've got Stormy Daniels coming forward, wants to get paid, and how this all went down. Here's a quick clip. Here's clip number 8 about how important this was to Donald Trump. And I think this is important to hear, how important it was to Donald Trump to keep this story secret, which goes to the violation of campaign finance law. So here's clip number 8.
Were you concerned about this news story becoming public right after the Access Hollywood study in terms of impact on the election?
I was concerned about it, but more importantly, Mr. Trump was concerned about it.
So more importantly, Mr. Trump was concerned about it. And what did he do? And it's completely already in the record, and I don't have to go through all of it. Michael Cohen formed shell corporations to funnel money to pay Stormy Daniels right before the campaign, like a week before Election Day. This money is being transferred to her to stop her from going forward. And as Michael Cohen has testified when he pled guilty in the Southern District of New York last year, he did that at the direction of and the coordination of individual number one, which he said point blank tonight was that person was, of course, Donald Trump. And he filled in the blank for us there. And this is one of the longer clips. I don't like to play too long of a clip. So here's a little bit over a minute and a half. Michael Cohen, his opening statement today about the reimbursement, how it went down, and how Donald Trump continued to further this criminal enterprise and scheme while president. So here's clip number 9.
I'm giving the committee today a copy of the $130,000 wire transfer from me to Ms. Clifford's attorney during the closing days of the presidential campaign that was demanded by Ms. Clifford to maintain her silence about her affair with Mr. Trump. And this is Exhibit 4 to my testimony. Mr. Trump directed me to use my own personal funds from a home equity line of credit to avoid any money being traced back to him that could negatively impact his campaign. And I did that too, without bothering to consider whether that was improper, much less whether it was the right thing to do or how would it impact me, my family, or the public. And I am going to jail in part because of my decision to help Mr. Trump hide that payment from the American people before they voted a few days later. As Exhibit 5A to my testimony shows, I am providing a copy of a $35,000 check that President Trump personally signed from his personal bank account on August 1st of 2017, when he was president of the United States, pursuant to the cover-up, which was the basis of my guilty plea, to reimburse me, the word used by Mr. Trump's TV lawyer, for the illegal hush money I paid on his behalf.
So there you go. You have Michael Cohen now testifying under oath, so it's evidence that Donald Trump, as president of the United States, gave him a check to continue the hush money reimbursement, which was a violation of campaign finance laws that he's already pled guilty to. So there was a lot of back and forth with different members of Congress. Republicans just attacked Michael Cohen over and over and over, saying you're a liar, you lied to Congress. That's true, he did lie to Congress. He lied to Congress to protect Donald Trump. And that seems to be forgotten by the Republicans for some reason. Not like he lied to Congress on an unrelated issue. He lied to Congress to protect Donald Trump. So this hush money investigation is going on not by Mueller, but in the Southern District of New York. And it's going on. We're going to find out what happened. We learned a lot about Alan Weisselberg, who was the CFO of Trump Organization. He needs to be called to the committee. He's already cooperating with Mueller, but I think, could share a lot. But let's talk about Russia now. So let's talk about the big issue that Mueller's dealing with and what we learned today. And we'll break it down to two parts here. One was the Russian conspiracy and the other is WikiLeaks. First, with the Russian conspiracy, here's what Michael Cohen said point blank. And some will be disappointed, but this is what he said. I know of no direct evidence that Mr. Trump or his campaign concluded with Russia, but, added, I have my suspicions. So he's saying I have no direct evidence that Trump and his campaign colluded with Russia. And then, though, he gave his example of what he thought his suspicions were. And it has to do with the Trump Tower meeting in June 2016, which is such an important meeting in the big picture of Russian conspiracy. This is the meeting that was prompted by an email to Donald Trump Jr. in June 2016 from their friend Bob Goldstone, who was telling them that the Argalovs, which are big Russian oligarchs that the Trump family has dealt business with, they did a whole pageant with together. And in that email, it said the Crown Prosecutor of Russia met with his father this morning, offered to provide the Trump campaign with some official documents and information that would incriminate Hillary in her dealings with Russia, be very useful to your father, adding, this is obviously very high level and sensitive information, but is part of Russia and its government support for Mr. Trump. So in this very email, Don Jr. gets, June 2016, telling him Russian government wants to help your father. And it seems the way this is written that he knew about it. They were already helping him. And the big question came, did Don Jr. tell his father about this meeting? And why does it matter? It matters for two reasons, folks. Donald Trump Jr. testified to Congress. He never told his father about the meeting before. He said his exact words was, I wouldn't waste his time with it, and I never spoke to my father about it, quote. You have that. Secondly, the reporting is Donald Trump, the father, in his response to Robert Mueller's questions, put in there he never knew about the Trump Tower meeting until a year later, in 2017, when the press and the news stories broke. Well, today, Michael Cohen added a little bit more evidence that perhaps they do know about it. But it's not the smoking gun that we all want. So let's hear clip number 11, where Michael Cohen lays out exactly how he believes he was in the room that Donald Trump Jr. told his father, and his father knew all about this meeting. Clip number 11.
Sometime in the summer of 2017, I read all over the media that there had been a meeting in Trump Tower in June of 2016 involving Don Jr. and others from the campaign with Russians, including a representative of the Russian government, and an email setting up the meeting with the subject line, "Dirt on Hillary Clinton." And something clicked in my mind. I remembered being in a room with Mr. Trump, probably in early June of 2016, when something peculiar happened. Don Trump Jr. came into the room and walked behind his father's desk, which in and of itself was unusual. People didn't just walk behind Mr. Trump's desk to talk to him. And I recall Don Jr. leaning over to his father and speaking in a low voice, which I could clearly hear, and saying, "The meeting is all set." And I remember Mr. Trump saying, "Okay, good, let me know." What struck me as I looked back and thought about the exchange between Don Jr. and his father was, first, that Mr. Trump had frequently told me and others that his son Don Jr. had the worst judgment of anyone in the world, and also that Don Jr. would never set up any meeting of significance alone, and certainly not without checking with his father. I also knew that nothing went on in Trump world, especially the campaign, without Mr. Trump's knowledge and approval.
I think that is very fair. That is common sense, that Donald Trump Jr. would never set up a meeting with Russian government officials that at the time he believed they had dirt on Hillary Clinton without going to his father. No one would keep that to themselves. You would tell your father, of course, you're in the same building. You, of course, would tell your father. And potentially this is really bad for Donald Trump Jr. and bad for Donald Trump himself. You know, there was a lot of questioning about dealings with Russia, financial dealings. Michael Cohen testified that Donald Trump was lying to the public, that he had the dealings for Trump Tower Russia going on. He knew all about it. They had a lot of discussions about it. The whole Trump family was involved. They all knew about it. Debbie Wasserman Schultz had a point to him saying, could the whole family be compromised? And he said yes, because they all know about the business dealings there. So that is potentially one thing. The other big, to me, and this is the really potentially big one, is WikiLeaks. You know, Donald Trump, in his statement to Robert Mueller, if the reporting is true, said he had no idea that WikiLeaks was trying to help their campaign. He had no idea before any of the releases. Well, here is Michael Cohen destroying that in a very blunt 1-minute statement about a story where he stood there and Roger Stone was there, and he heard right on the speakerphone exactly what was going on. Here's clip number 13.
A lot of people have asked me about whether Mr. Trump knew about the release of the hacked documents, the Democratic National Committee emails, ahead of time. And the answer is yes. As I earlier stated, Mr. Trump knew from Roger Stone in advance about the WikiLeaks drop of emails. In July of 2016, days before the Democratic convention, I was in Mr. Trump's office when his secretary announced that Roger Stone was on the phone. Mr. Trump put Mr. Stone on the speakerphone. Mr. Stone told Mr. Trump that he had just gotten off the phone with Julian Assange, and that Mr. Assange told Mr. Stone that within a couple of days, there would be a massive dump of emails that would damage Hillary Clinton's campaign. Mr. Trump responded by stating to the effect, "Wouldn't that be great?"
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? That's one of those lines that may stay around in history when this fully goes to its logical extension of how it all ends up. By the way, WikiLeaks, according to Mike Pompeo at the time, he was a CIA director for Donald Trump. Mike Pompeo last year said WikiLeaks, quote, is a hostile intelligence service aided by Russia. So WikiLeaks, in this scenario, was working with Russia. You've got conspiracy there. And this timeline's so interesting. Michael Cohen testified a few days before the DNC convention in 2016. He gets the call. He's in the room. The DNC convention was July 25th to 28th, 2016, meaning about, say, July 23rd, 2016, Donald Trump knew from Roger Stone right there that WikiLeaks was about to dump emails that were hacked from the DNC. What happened on July 27, 2016, just days later? Well, let me remind you. Here is Donald Trump, clip number 14.
I will tell you this. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press. Let's see if that happens.
Folks, that's a timeline. You've got a timeline, assuming this is true, the testimony, that mid-July he's told by Roger Stone, WikiLeaks is going to help the campaign. He's going to dump the emails. A few days later, there's Donald Trump saying, Russia, if you're listening, you'd be mightily rewarded. You know, you've got all the makings of a conspiracy. There are still things we don't know about because we're learning about these things every day. It is remarkable to see what happens. It was a remarkable learning experience today to see the Republicans defend Trump more than care about the United States of America in Congress because they're all worried about getting reelected. That's their motivation. The rank and file, I mean, if you hope Trump's going to be impeached, what we saw today was a preview. No Republicans will actually go at the allegations and discuss it. All they will do is defend Donald Trump at all costs. So that makes it much, much harder. So let's take a break. We're going to come back. We'll talk some more right after this. At this point, the question is not who connected to Donald Trump as a criminal. The question is anyone connected to Donald Trump who's not a criminal?
The Dean Obeidallah Show, Sirius XM Progress.